This is the house where Claudinia Blanchard was found stabbed to death. It set off a roller coaster story.
What would drive Gypsy to want to plan the murder of her own mother?
Imagine a world where the one person who should be your protector, your guide, your source of unconditional love, your mother, turns out to be your biggest source of pain. Gypsy's life, as the public knew it, was one of constant struggle and illness. She was thought to be suffering from a plethora of diseases: leukemia, muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, among others. Her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, was seen as a devoted caretaker, tirelessly battling her daughter's never-ending health conditions. However, beneath this veneer of struggle and resilience lay a disturbing reality of deceit and control. We're delving into the chilling story of Gypsy Rose, where the sacred bonds of motherhood are entangled in a web of deception, illness, and a desperate cry for freedom. Dee Dee Blanchard, born Claudine Pitre in Louisiana, came from a family background that was complex and at times troubled. As early as her teenage years, claims exist that Dee Dee engaged in theft, even allegations of stealing from her own family. After high school, Dee Dee would work as a nurse's aide. This experience in the medical field would later play a crucial role in how she managed to fabricate medical conditions so convincingly. Her knowledge of medical terminology and procedures would come to play when deceiving doctors and others on Gypsy's health. In 1991, Dee Dee found herself pregnant at the young age of 24 by an even younger Rod Blanchard, age 17. The couple would marry upon the news of their daughter's soon arrival. However, their marriage would end shortly before Gypsy's birth, with Rod citing that they were too young. After their separation, Dee Dee took Gypsy and moved back home, creating a physical and emotional distance between Rod and his daughter. Soon after Gypsy was born, Dee Dee would tell Rod that Gypsy had a chromosomal disorder, which led to a series of health problems. Rod, who later remarried, would try to maintain regular contact with Gypsy through phone calls and occasional visits. He and his new family would send Gypsy gifts and financial support, including child support payments. However, Dee Dee would often tell Gypsy that her father had abandoned them and showed little interest in her, a narrative that hindered the development of their relationship. Once back at home, Dee Dee's animosity towards her stepmother would become so evident that she would later be accused of poisoning her with Roundup. While living under the same roof, Dee Dee's stepmother would start suffering from a chronic illness, symptoms that would subside as soon as Dee Dee moved out. As Gypsy grew, Dee Dee's claims about her daughter's health grew more serious and more complex, which therefore subjected Gypsy to numerous unnecessary surgeries, including procedures on her salivary glands and eye muscles, and was confined to a wheelchair, despite doctors' repeated assertions that they could find no abnormalities to justify such treatments. Dr. Flasterstein, a pediatric neurologist who saw Gypsy in 2007, became suspicious of Dee Dee's claims regarding Gypsy's muscular dystrophy, given that the previous tests and MRIs showed no abnormalities in Gypsy's muscles. After examining Gypsy and finding no supporting evidence for Dee Dee's claims, Dr. Flasterstein grew increasingly skeptical. He noted discrepancies in Gypsy's medical history and the lack of documentation to support Dee Dee's assertions about her daughter's health conditions. Dr. Flasterstein's doubt led him to suspect Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a disorder where a caregiver fabricates or induces illnesses in another person for attention and sympathy. He contacted Gypsy's primary care doctor to share his concerns. However, his actions were futile as no action was taken. Upon learning about Dr. Flasterstein's doubts, Dee Dee stopped taking Gypsy to see him. Realizing that her fabrications were under scrutiny, she decided to move. Dee Dee saw a fresh start where their history was unknown, and her claims about Gypsy's health would not be questioned, and that place would be Springfield, Missouri. In Springfield, Dee Dee was able to reinvent their story. She presented Gypsy as a young girl with a range of chronic conditions, garnering sympathy and support from the local community. Dee Dee financially benefited from misrepresenting her daughter's health. Throughout the years, Dee Dee received substantial financial support, including donations from charities such as Habitat for Humanity, Ronald McDonald House, and Make-A-Wish Foundation. Gypsy's supposed medical conditions led to free flights to see doctors and free trips to concerts. Their house in Springfield was built by Habitat for Humanity, customized for Gypsy's wheelchair, complete with a wheelchair ramp and hot tub. The control Dee Dee exerted over Gypsy extended beyond medical interventions. She regularly shaved Gypsy's head, claiming it was necessary due to her leukemia. She also manipulated Gypsy's age, altering her birth certificate and other documents to make her seem younger, thus prolonging the facade of her childlike dependency and innocence. The initial seeds of doubt were sown when Gypsy was around the age of 10. During medical appointments, she noticed the doctor's skepticism about her mother's claims. Despite Dee Dee's assertions, medical tests often came back negative, failing to support the diagnosis of severe conditions Dee Dee described. As she entered adolescence, Gypsy began to use the internet in secret, exploring a world that had been hidden from her. Online, Gypsy encountered stories of other people with the same conditions her mother claimed she had, and she realized her experiences did not align. The internet became a tool for Gypsy to understand her reality, and with this knowledge, her belief in her mother's narrative began to crumble. As her understanding of the truth grew, so did Gypsy's desire for independence and freedom. She began to resist her mother's control, albeit covertly. After years of doubt and abuse, both physical and emotional from her mother, Gypsy had had enough. She knew she wasn't as limited as her mother had made her out to be, and Gypsy knew she had to create a physical separation between her and her mother. At that point in Gypsy's life, she was under the impression that her estranged father, Rod, did not care for her, and therefore had no one to lean on. She felt alone. Gypsy's first attempt at freedom came in 2011. Unbeknown to her, she was around 20 years old at the time. Having been a regular at science fiction and fantasy conventions since the age of 10, Gypsy would take this opportunity to flee. When Dee Dee became distracted, Gypsy would flee with a man that she had connected with online during her secret computer access. But this attempt would prove futile, as Dee Dee would later find Gypsy in a hotel room. Dee Dee would then go as far as showing the man false documentation with an incorrect birthday to warn him that Gypsy was a minor, and further threatened to call the police on him. After the incident, Dee Dee would destroy Gypsy's computer with a hammer and threaten to break her fingers if she attempted to escape again. Gypsy was then restrained with a leash and handcuffs to her bed for 2 whole weeks. Dee Dee would also convince Gypsy that she had been declared mentally incompetent to the authorities, making Gypsy believe that the police wouldn't trust her if she sought help. After being released, Gypsy once more tried to escape on her own, this time by exerting violence over her mother. Gypsy would shoot her mother 10 times with what she thought was a real gun, when in reality, it was a BB gun. And now, a word from our sponsor, Audible. Today's episode is intense and full of twists, much like the best-selling audiobooks you can find on Audible. If you're fascinated by the complexities of human behavior and true crime stories, Audible has a vast collection that will keep you hooked. With Audible, you can explore titles like The Stranger Beside Me, a gripping account of Ted Bundy, or delve into Mindhunter for an FBI perspective on profiling serial killers. Audible offers a seamless listening experience, allowing you to dive deep into these stories while you're on the go, doing chores, or just relaxing at home. And here's something special for our listeners. Visit Audible using the link in the video description below to start your risk-free 30-day trial today. Your next favorite true crime story is just a play button away. Now, back to our story. As time went on and Gypsy regained some of her mother's trust, she would go back to her secret use of the internet, and eventually she would meet Nicholas Godejohn. After some time talking, Gypsy and Nicholas would begin a romantic relationship. As the relationship deepened, Gypsy shared with Nicholas the reality of her life and her mother's abuse. Nicholas, who had his own mental health challenges, became increasingly involved in Gypsy's desire for freedom. Together, they began to devise a plan to kill Dee Dee, a plan that was both a reflection of their desperation and a misguided belief that it was the only way for Gypsy to be free. The couple communicated through secret Facebook messages, discussing and planning the murder in detail. The plan was simple yet chilling. Nicholas would travel from Wisconsin to Missouri, where Gypsy and her mother lived. He would then murder Dee Dee, allowing Gypsy to escape her life of abuse and start anew with him. Gypsy's role was to ensure that everything was in place for Nicholas to carry out the act. In June 2015, the plan was set into motion. Nicholas traveled to Missouri and checked into a motel near Gypsy's home. Gypsy, adhering to the plan, waited for her mother to fall asleep. She then let Nicholas into the house, giving him the duct tape, gloves, and knife they had agreed he would use to kill Dee Dee. The murder was brutal. Nicholas stabbed Dee Dee multiple times while Gypsy hid in the bathroom. After the murder, Gypsy and Nicholas fled the scene, taking several $1,000s that Dee Dee kept in the house. They believed that with Dee Dee gone and a perfect cover-up, they could finally be together and live a normal life. However, their plan to cover up the murder was flawed. They would leave behind a trail of evidence, including the murder weapon and their online communication. The pair would post a disturbing message on Dee Dee's Facebook account, which alerted friends and eventually led to the police discovering Dee Dee's body. The investigation into Dee Dee's murder quickly led the police to Gypsy and Nicholas. Within days, they were arrested, and the shocking truth about Gypsy's life and the extent of Dee Dee's abuse was revealed. The public's perception of the case was turned upside down. Gypsy, previously seen as a chronically ill and abused daughter, was now a murder suspect. Evidence pointed towards a planned murder, with Gypsy and her boyfriend Nicholas as the primary suspects. Surveillance footage, receipts, and witness testimonies led authorities to Wisconsin, where Gypsy and Nicholas were found and arrested. Upon her arrest, Gypsy confessed to the crime, revealing the years of abuse she suffered at the hands of her mother. The legal proceedings for Gypsy and Nicholas were complex. Gypsy was charged with second-degree murder. Her defense centered around her years of abuse and the argument that she saw murder as her only route to freedom. The prosecution faced the challenge of balancing the heinous nature of the crime with the extenuating circumstances of Gypsy's upbringing. Nicholas Gotti John's trial was separate. He faced charges of first-degree murder, with the prosecution portraying him as the one who carried out the actual stabbing. In 2016, Gypsy accepted a plea bargain, pleading guilty to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Following these revelations, Rod expressed regret about not seeing through Dee Dee's lies and has since been supportive of Gypsy, advocating for her release and maintaining contact with her while she served her prison sentence. Nicholas did head to trial in 2018, which concluded with him being found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial highlighted the complexities surrounding mental health issues in the criminal justice system. Nicholas's defense argued that his mental capacity and the influence of Gypsy played a significant role in his actions, but the jury ultimately held him fully responsible for the murder. The Gypsy Rose case had significant implications for how the legal system views cases involving victims of long-term abuse. It raised questions about the appropriate sentencing for crimes committed under extreme psychological duress and the need for more nuanced approaches in the criminal justice system. The case also increased public awareness of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, shedding light on this rare but severe form of abuse. It prompted discussions about the need for better detection and intervention strategies in cases of medical child abuse. As many of you know, as of December 2023, Gypsy Rose has served her sentence and is now a free woman. She is now back in society and raising awareness for Munchausen syndrome by proxy. What are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to subscribe for more crimes committed by women. Thank you for watching Closing the Crime Gap. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.